Hey guys, so in this video, we're going to go over misconceptions that are commonly seen in Chapter 6, A Tour of the Cell. So the first misconception that we're going to go over is cell size. So it's commonly believed that cell size, the difference in it, is based only on length. And that's just simply not true. Usually when we see size differences, it's going to be represented the way that we see it here, kind of like this. That space is 1 to 10 micrometers, and that this space is going to be 10 to 100 micrometers. So when we're looking at it, it seems that we're talking about the diameter of the cell or just its length. So that would make our eukaryotic cell 10 times longer than the prokaryotic cell. But in reality, cell size, it's determined by two factors. Length is one of them, but the other factor is our surface area. So our eukaryotic cells, they are 10 times longer, but they are actually 1,000 times greater in volume than our prokaryotic cells. And we can actually explore this surface area to volume relationship by using this figure. So we have all of these cubes, and we can say that each cube represents individual cells. And as these cubes or these cells, as their size increases, it's going to increase in both surface area and volume. But volume is going to increase so much faster than surface area. And this happens because surface area, it is proportional to length squared, and volume, it is proportional to length cubed. So when we're going from this little singleton cell and we're doubling its cell length, what happens is that our surface area, since we know it's length squared, it's going to be 2 squared, which is equal to 4. And then our volume is going to be length, which is 2, cubed, which is going to be 8. So our surface area is going to increase by 4. And we know that it's working because when we do 6 times 4, we do get 24. And when we multiply our volume 1 by 8, we get 8. So this same exact concept, it also applies to when we triple a cell in length. So our surface area is going to be the length, which is 3 cells, to the second power, which is equal to 9. And then our volume, which is going to be 3 to the third power, which is equal to 27. So our surface area, it's increasing by 9 times, and our volume is increasing 27 times. So this really rapid volume increase, it explains why our cells cannot grow indefinitely. The faster our volume grows, there's going to be less surface area that's going to be available to exchange nutrients, oxygen, and waste relative to that cell's need. And that's why our cells remain small and why they had to evolve and adapt and get specialized structures in order to increase their surface area to increase their efficiency. So another common misconception is that plants obtain ATP only from photosynthesis, but that's not true. It can be assumed that because plants produce their own food or because they have chloroplasts, which are these structures here, that they don't need to perform aerobic respiration the way that animals do. But in reality, plants, they have both chloroplasts and mitochondria. And both of these organelles, they produce ATP. And it's important that we remember that plant cells are eukaryotic. And because they're eukaryotic, they contain membrane-bound organelles that allow different processes to happen at the same exact time. So chloroplasts, they're going to generate ATP during photosynthesis as that sunlight is available to our plant. But mitochondria, on the other hand, it's going to perform aerobic respiration, and it's going to supply ATP to that plant cell at all times, including the nighttime when there's no sunlight. And mitochondria, they are so essential because if plants could only produce energy during the day, that would mean that they would struggle to survive at night. So the reality is that our plants, they depend on respiration just as much as animals do, but they perform photosynthesis and aerobic respiration at the same exact time. And so the final misconception that we're going to address is about the cytoskeleton. So it's often thought that the cytoskeleton is this rigid and permanent structure, that it's going to just supply support and stability to the cell. And this is partially true, but it's not entirely accurate. The cytoskeleton, it is made up of three main components. It's microfilaments, microtubules, and intermediate filaments. And of these three, only the intermediate filaments are going to be relatively static. So they are not going to be completely static. They're only going to be a little bit more static. And they're going to provide this really important tensile strength and structural integrity to the cell. But they still have dynamic properties the same way that our microtubules and our microfilaments have. Just less of it. But in reality, what happens is that the cytoskeleton, it is extremely dynamic, right? So it's going to assemble, disassemble, and it's going to change its shape, transport material, and it's going to do all of this in response to a variety of conditions. So when we're looking at this image, we can see that we have this really intricate network of the cytoskeleton, and we're going to see organelles that are interwoven into that cytoskeleton. And that cytoskeleton, it has to be flexible, it has to be dynamic, it has to be responsive, because our organelles, they move. They need to move within our cell. So if our cytoskeleton wasn't dynamic, we wouldn't have the appropriate function of cells. So we can think of the cytoskeleton like a spider web. The same way that a spider web allows movement along its strands and it can change shape based on external factors or because of the spider's needs, that cytoskeleton, it's going to support cellular movement, and it's going to dynamically respond to both internal and external cues as well. So to summarize, when we think about cell size, it's not only length, it's length and surface area. As our cells grow, their volume increases faster than their surface area, which is important because it makes large cells inefficient. And when we're talking about energy in plants, we know that they do get energy from photosynthesis, but they also get it through aerobic respiration, which is done by our mitochondria. And the last thing is that our cytoskeleton, it is a key structure that's going to give the cell its shape and support, but it isn't static. It's constantly restructuring itself to support organelle movement. So to sum up, cell size, energy production, and the cytoskeleton, they are all very important to how a cell functions and survives.